Mr. Speaker, I think this bill is a solution in search of a problem. Between 2002 and 2008, the United States Department of Justice was rather focused on voter issues. They initiated 180 criminal investigations. They issued 89 charges against people for various types of voter infractions, and a whole bunch of U.S. attorneys lost their jobs, many of you all may remember, because they weren't aggressive enough. That exercise resulted in 52 convictions for vote buying, phone line jamming, and GOTV operations, ballot box stuffing. Not a single prosecution for voter impersonation, not a single one in the United States. Now, I think we also need to think about exactly what this bill is aimed at. And we're talking about going after people who are, I assume, trying to fix an election one vote at a time. That is an awful risk to put oneself to try and cause an election. I mean, I know a lot of people want to vote, but to commit a Class 5 felony, to break federal law, the idea that a single person is going to try and break federal and state law simply to cast a vote is not plausible. Most people, if they want to change an election of an outcome, they will try to do something in a much broader way that affects a lot more votes. They'll try and affect a DRE. They'll try and wire themselves in. They'll do the things that the DOJ prosecuted here. But most people, it's just implausible, I think, that somebody would try and impersonate one vote to actually try and change an election. Now, I would also ask to think about the process this sets up. This says that if you don't have your license, you don't have a form of identification on the day of the election, you have to cast a provisional ballot, which means you then have to go the following day down to the Board of Elections office to a hearing to defend your vote. Now, who's this going to affect? Who doesn't have a driver's license, folks? I know some elderly folks in my district. I knocked on the door of a woman, I think I talked about her last year on another bill, who's 105 years old. She can't drive. I knocked on the door of another woman who is 96, 99 years old. They can't drive. They don't have driver's licenses anymore because they don't need them. The blind don't have driver's licenses. I have a lot of people that need legal services from me because their license has been taken or suspended. There are people who lose their driver's licenses. There are people who don't have licenses for a lot of reasons. And now what we're asking them to do, they already don't have a license, is to go the next day and get in a car they're not allowed to drive, or maybe, are legally prohibited from driving, find some way to get to, say, in my jurisdiction, the Fairfax County Government Center, which in rush hour traffic from my part of the county takes a little bit of time. If you can even get in a car. If you can't get in a car, it probably takes you about 4 or 5 buses to get there for a 9 a.m. meeting from my part of the county. It doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense. You can't do that. And there are people, I'll also note, there are people of religious beliefs that don't have licenses. The Amish, we have Mennonites in the Shenandoah Valley. I'm not sure if they drive or not, but I know they ride around in buggies. I don't think they have a license. Now, what is driving this? This case Campbell came down a few years ago, the United States Supreme Court, which said that it involved some nuns, I think, who tried to vote and didn't have a license, and then Indiana enacted a bill saying they had to show an ID to vote, and the Supreme Court said it was okay. But let me just note that in dissent, Justice John Paul Stevens, appointed by President Nixon, he complained that there is no way to quantify the magnitude of the burden on this narrow class of people who can't vote to determine if this is justified. Justice Souter wrote, Indiana's voter ID law threatens to impose non-trivial burdens on the voting rights of tens of thousands of those state citizens, and a significant percentage of those individuals are likely to be deterred from voting. Now, I know that this is well-intentioned, and I know that it's an attempt to ensure the integrity of elections, but it is it's a sledgehammer approach to a problem which I don't even think exists. Mr. Speaker, this affects the homeless, it affects the poor, it affects the blind, it affects the elderly, it affects religious objectors, it affects people who have problems going on in their life that has nothing to do with their right to vote. If anything in this state, we should be lowering barriers to voting. We should be making it easier for people to vote, not harder. And I'd encourage this chamber to vote against the bill.